I think if we want to move forward, we have to learn to let things pass in a real way. I think when we get in the habit of not really allowing change to take place, especially within ourselves, then we start to depend on the external world in order for our own change. I think a lot of what makes things new is our ability to let go of the past, to let go of what's old, to let go of what no longer serves us. And I think many times what doesn't serve us most is our own mentality about ourselves, the way we carry ourselves, or the way we feel about ourselves most truly. I think that a lot of things have to do with how you feel about you, because you're the person who navigates your entire life and you're always experiencing your own emotions and your own, I guess, feelings about everything you experience. And until we give ourselves real opportunities to sort of be beyond our feelings in that way or be beyond our thoughts in that way, then we're always going to be controlled by them. And one thing that I've been thinking about recently is how important thought is in general. I made a video recently titled something like, "We are exactly as we imagine, we can imagine anything." There's always so much potential and possibility within our character, within who we are. And when we don't give ourselves any real chance to interject something new, to think of something new, we're left with what we thought of in the past or what we've been told. Many times I think our character and who we are isn't something that we truly have taken a lot of part in. And I think we should take a lot of part in it. And I think it's not necessarily a battle of, trying to find out exactly what to be. I think it's more so a battle of understanding that you already are somebody and understanding that a lot of the expressions can be flipped. Like a lot of what we express in one way can be expressed in a different way. There are a million ways to express you, but who you are is one thing. And I think sometimes that's hard to conceptualize, that we have parts of ourselves that are, inherent to us and parts of ourselves that aren't. And I think what makes something inherent is always our relationship to it. Whether or not we want to allow it to be part of our character, whether or not we associate it with who we are through and throughout. And I think it's about being intentional with certain associations, intentional with the way we carry ourselves into certain predicaments, the way we, perpetuate certain narratives or make things so cyclic by continuing to do the thing that's taking us away from ourselves and causing us to repeat it in the first place. I think it's about letting it go, like truly learning to let go. I think learning to let go in general is one of the most important things. When you learn to let go, you allow things to not be inherent to you. You can let go of your certain attributes. You can let go of your negative perspective on certain things. And you can let go of your own insistence that you don't deserve good in the world, that you don't deserve to live a life full of your own appreciation and love. I think when we learn to live in our own appreciation, when we learn to live in a certain amount of happiness or in a certain amount of contentment, then a lot of things start to go our way simply because we're sort of aligning ourselves with this idea that everything already is going our way. And I think if we attract what we are, and we're somebody who exhibits a behavior of being exactly where they need to be, then everything where they need to be will fall in line. Everything falls in line when you decide to align yourself with what it is you want. And when I say align yourself with what it is you want, I'm not strictly talking about action. I'm not always talking about, all the work you put into this, all the work you put into that, but more so the work you put into allowing yourself to put in work. The work you put into yourself to allow yourself to appreciate yourself for the work that you put in and call it sufficient and call it enough for you in a way. Not to say that you've already like physically attained that something, but what reason do we have to constantly take away our appreciation for what we have yet to gain? You're on the track to sort of do it, and we never give ourselves a piece of the cake before we, get to the end goal. And I don't mean that to say that we need to sort of cheat the system and just start being super happy for not achieving anything and never really try. But to say when we do fully try, when we do fully allow ourselves to be within our effort, within the things that lead to our goals, that lead to our aspirations, we need to learn how to give ourselves affirmation in proportion to that end goal. We need to sort of give ourselves what it is we want before we actually attain it in the physical world, before we actually receive it in this reality. I think our imaginative principle, the way we think, the ability to just interject certain thoughts into your head is something that we need to utilize. I think many times, or a lot of times, people of today don't really think. We have thoughts, but we don't really think. And what I think thinking is in this way is really assessing what thoughts are in your head and what you're doing with them. Like what purpose they serve, and how they got in there in the first place, and whether or not they're holding up certain beliefs and narratives that are taking away from you. I think when we allow things to sort of bypass our conscious mind and we just allow them to trickle into our head, we become victim to a lot of things that we aren't necessarily aware of. And I think giving yourself an opportunity to think is not only one to be able to discern, but to be able to interject, to be able to give yourself more foundation to actually stand upon, to actually give yourself affirmation in a thought process and in a pattern way of thinking that actually allows you to continue to move forward with who you are, progressively letting things go and allowing things to come into your life. I think we need to recognize that everything is always coming. Everything's always coming from us in a way, in terms of our perspective. And in the lives we live, each day truly is a new life. Each moment truly is a new life because we have yet to experience it. Or we are getting to experience it only now. So what objective do we have in constantly thinking about things that degrade our path? If we can just be present enough to actually work on that path where it is, it's like an act of manifesting it into a now. Because now is the only time that it'll arrive, and now is the only time where you can put in work to get it, if that makes sense. You always have to interject something into the present moment, and that's why I think it's always about how you feel now when it comes to manifestation, when it comes to the law of vibration, anything like that. It's always about how you're feeling in some type of present moment, and the overall strength and character that you're giving to yourself in a way. Like making sure you're letting go of the things that are taken away from you and not resisting your own change in a way. I think a lot of us have to have introspection in order to admit to ourselves certain things that we don't want to do currently. And I think it's not only the introspection that matters, but loving yourself enough to act upon that introspection. I think sometimes when we recognize we're drinking a poison, we reference it to other poisons. And we tell ourselves, well, it's not that bad because I could be doing this. And, I'm not here to be some type of moral regulator or anything like that. But to say that we know it's still poison. Part of us knows that. Part of us knows that what we're doing is still limiting us. And even if we don't know, it is still limiting us. I think it's always about what we feed ourselves, both mentally and physically. What we're allowing ourselves to undertake and the things that we're holding on to. And I think a lot of us are holding on to a certain amount of actions or a certain amount of thoughts that are unbefitting truly. And I don't know, in my own experience, it's sort of been like a cycle. You get into this one headspace of you want to sort of be over everything that was in the past. And then you get into this another headspace of, well, it's not really the past if it's right now. In that way it isn't. And I think some of us recognize that who we are changes over time, that who we are changes from moment to moment, and that we have become new in this present moment, regardless of whether or not we've undergone some type of real quote unquote change. And we invite the past back into the present because we think we're more fit to handle something. We think that we can ingest this poison much more readily, or that it's no longer going to be potent for us, or no longer going to be impactful, when it's going to remain as it is. I think we need to learn how to not really reference the past in a subtle way. Not to say that we shouldn't learn from our mistakes in the past, but we should learn the lesson and forget the teacher in a way, and continue to keep that lesson here in the present, so we can actually move forward, so we're not repeating the same mistakes. instead of taking that poison, we might just allow ourselves to drink something beneficial for us. To actually drink some water one day or do something, I don't know, literally just doing stuff that contributes to you. Literally just giving yourself a chance to let things go in a real way. And the law of detachment, and people talk about detachment quite often on this platform or on anything that I've experienced. And I think detachment truly is a beautiful thing. But I think the way we go about it sometimes is sort of skewed. Detachment isn't not caring to me. To me, it's caring about yourself so intently that you're not going to care about things that take away your care from yourself. It's understanding the relationship that we have to certain things and how sometimes we place a lot of things in the external world above our internal peace, above our internal care, above our internal validity. And that's not to say that we don't value things outside of us, but to say we value ourselves enough to not be valued by them. You know, giving ourselves a space to truly occupy. And I think we don't give ourselves that space often enough. And I think that's why we repeat certain cycles, because we don't feel adequate. And we want to feel some type of familiar feeling that allows us to realign ourselves with who we are. Because who we are is in this way based on certain actions, based on certain narratives, certain characteristics, certain this is that and the other. When it really needs to be based on what we embody in the present moment. What's sitting right here? What's perceiving right here? What's allowing you to speak? What's conscious of you speaking? What's conscious of you thinking? Giving that a real platform, giving that a real audience, and listening to the way it reacts to the world around you. Like when you're doing certain stuff that's unbefitting, you'll feel it. You'll feel it taking away from you in a way. I don't even know how to explain it. But with me, I think it's really always been about understanding that who we are is more easily expressed than it is thought. And I think we don't give ourselves a chance to truly be expressed because we're never listening to the expression. We're not listening to how we're actually feeling. We're, in a way, listening to our previous thoughts about certain things. And when I say listening to how we feel, I'm not saying that if we feel something in a moment, we're not truly listening to it. I mean, to truly listen to how you feel is to understand why you feel that way. And to understand that often how we feel is not grounded in some type of external thing. It's grounded in our internal reaction to an external thing. It's always about how we react to a certain stimulus, to a certain pattern, to a certain thing. And when we're not giving ourselves real audience, not paying attention to ourselves, we'll continue doing this performance of being impacted by this and being swaying this way, being impacted by this other thing and going back and forth and going all around through our own cycle of our own hysteria, of our own pain in a way. And I think our pain will only stop once we start actively not contributing to it. And the same thing goes with our negativity. I think sometimes we live in a negative world because we perpetuate it. Because we enforce the idea that the world is negative with each toss and turn, with each thing that we identify as negative, you know. And if we didn't call anything negative, how could we live in a negative world? And I'm not saying that to say we have to disregard everything that is bad, but to say that when things are bad, we shouldn't allow ourselves to become bad with them. I think one thing about negativity is the best way to heal it, the best way to combat it is not with more negativity. It's positivity. It's this compliment. It's the opposite. It's right. And um it truly is, I think, about allowing yourself to contrast it. Recognizing and holding on to aspects of who you are, or letting yourself go enough to let it stay. And when I say letting yourself go enough to let it stay, I mean letting your dependence on external things go, or letting your dependence on yourself to be a certain way go. So it doesn't matter how things are in the world, you're still going to remain as you are. And that doesn't mean we can't be changed by the world, but to say that the only way we can be changed by the world is if we allow our perspective to allow it, giving ourselves a chance to sort of decide what we agree upon, what we're allowing into our headspace, what we're allowing into our character. Otherwise, we're always going to be feeling in proportion to everything that's not us. We're always going to be valued in proportion to everything that's not us. And we're always going to be loved in proportion to everything that is not us. And I think personally that love is something you have to give yourself. And it's not always expressed in just a lovey dovey way like romantic. It's not like a, oh my God, I love you so much. Like, it's not like that always. I think it's more so about understanding how you impact you. And if you are vesting yourself in love, it's about vesting attention to those things to make sure you're not doing anything that takes you away from yourself. Like, not doing the things that limit you, not doing the things that cause your undoing, not having certain mentalities and thought processes that truly take you away from yourself. Because there's no real objective in doing that. You could think you're a piece of dirt and still be capable, but you might not explore that capability. And you could think you're the best thing ever and be a piece of shit or a piece of dirt. And find a way. It's always really about the mentality that we have. And I think that's why we see so many like celebrities, etc., etc. Not saying specific people, but saying sometimes people in these high positions are not necessarily people who had everything laid out for them. They're people who explored the idea of their own capability. And instead of allowing it to be answered by the world, held firmly onto the answer that they know it's possible. And they know that if a human can do it, then it must be humanly possible. And you too can do it. You know, it's all about giving yourself an opportunity to do that which you want and not referencing it to anything else in this world. Truly giving yourself a chance is about not referencing anything but the chance that you have. And I think many of us ask ourselves certain questions about what we want to do, who we want to be, and we never really provide an answer. You're asking yourself a question so you can provide the answer. And I think a lot of us want it answered for us. I think it's easy to want to, have the world sort of tell you exactly what you want to do so you don't have to play a role in it. But I think that's something we've been taught in a way. We've been taught to constantly be on the wait for some type of stimulus, some type of relation, some type of something to funnel our energy and passion into, to funnel our attention into so we can continue to move forward. And I think the true successful person is someone who can do that for themselves. Giving yourself enough motivation, or I guess exploring enough with an open mind, doing enough trial and error. I think sometimes our biggest error is in our lack of trial. We don't try a lot of things and we don't know what we want to do. So we try one thing we may like, or we may, somebody may give us affirmation for it. And we continue to stick with that thing throughout our entire lives until we realize that, is this really what I wanted to do? Is this really what I want for myself? And I don't mean that with everything that gives us some type of monetary gain. I don't mean with that in terms of money. I mean that in terms of our passion, in terms of our inner state and things that truly bring us peace, the things that make us feel most like ourselves, things that allow you to express yourself to yourself in a real way, things that allow you to be present, and there are plenty of things that allow you to be present. Like for me, it was writing, and I talk about this all the time. I feel most present when I'm writing. I feel most present when I'm, allowing myself to sort of be on the page instead of in my mind, instead of in the world, even in a way. It's about giving yourself a chance to give yourself audience so you can actually give yourself applause. So you can actually give yourself the love that you desire, the love that you need in order to continue in this entire journey that is you. So if anything, I think it's really about our ability to let things go, our ability to let other people be other people, allow movement so you can be still in a way. I think sometimes when everything around us is moving and we have a problem with it, or I'll say this. I think sometimes when we are trying to be still and everything around us is moving, we feel at odds because sometimes we think we have to be moving with them. And I don't mean that in terms of like everything's progressing and we're staying still, but in the sense of allowing ourselves to be firm or have some type of foundation in who we are, while everything outside of us is constantly presenting us with change. And I think sometimes we have a disdain for that and we cause ourselves to remain stagnant. We cause ourselves to not allow ourselves to develop into what we actually want. And we become people who are constantly referenced to the movement around us, constantly trying to catch up to the things wearing by, rather than actually allowing ourselves to be caught by who we are. And I think in that way, a lot of our negativity and a lot of the negative things in life have already caught up to us because we haven't allowed ourselves to be still, because we're constantly running from them in expectation that we'll outrun them. But if we have to run from it, that means that if we were to be still with ourselves, it had already caught us. And that's why I think letting go is important. It's sort of about not contributing to the chase, not contributing to the running from either, but being where you are and recognizing that that in and of itself is always sufficient. All that to say, thank you. Keep y'all, keep being great. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Let me know if you like this setup. I only did this because I had the podcast set up and I didn't want to move all my equipment. So thank you, keep being on, keep great. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, doing what you can, what you have. Book on the way. It's almost a month that I drop. Shout out, y'all.